it's important to be crystal clear and transparent when we're talking about funding, basic allotment, and what that number is versus the money that's going for this program. Basic allotment has been said to be at 6,160. You and I had a brief conversation about that earlier. And then in exchange earlier, the number of 15,642. That's what y'all are alleging that the basic allotment is at, right?
Yes. So we have 15,000 plus that we're relying on for our estimates in the current base bill and with the new funding that we have before us. Even Raise Your Hand Texas is published far and wide that $11,000 plus is the number. It's certainly grown since those published numbers, but referring to the basic allotment as what we give our public school kids and comparing that to this funding stream for the few ESA recipients that we have included, that's not accurate.
Okay, let's talk about that 15,642 because that includes federal money, right? Okay, it includes allotments for special education, facilities. It also takes into account the money that's used to pay the principal and interest on bonds. So when you take that down, you're at about 11 to 12 per pupil. 11 to 12,000 per pupil. Okay? So again, going from that 15,000 and including all those things that are included in that number, and then you take out the federal money, which is about 10%, then we're at about 9,900 to 10,800 per pupil.
Senator Alvarado, we could take out everything, but I include bond money that's building new classrooms and facilities and bringing in chillers so kids don't sit in 104-degree classrooms. I'm including all of that as money that pours into the classroom. All funding disciplines, we'd be around that $16,000 number.
Okay, so the 10,000 per student, all of that is coming strictly, solely, only from state funding, right?
If you're excluding like a la carte, many of these different funding streams, sure.
The 10,000 that your program is going to pay, that's for each student, all of that comes exclusively from state money.
Yes, you have the basic or initial allotment, and then you have K through 3, and you have income, and you have special needs. You have all kinds of different allotments that average up to the number that I mentioned. That I mean, all the teacher organizations that support, campaign efforts for you and many others across the state, publishing an average of state assistance around that $11,000 number. The reason why all the teacher organizations are quoting that number is they're not excluding this a la carte menu that you're talking about. But at 16, I would agree that is total aid.
Okay. And the point I'm trying to make with this is that this program, the 10,000, again, is all from state money. But what we put into public education, it's a lot less per pupil. Because if you take the, as I went through the numbers, you take into consideration the allotments for special ed, the facilities, the bond, the federal money, then we're at about almost 10,000 per pupil. But of that 10,000, 43% comes from the state, only 43%. The rest is locally funded, okay? So then that means that the voucher program or your ESA program is 100% state funded. And then what we spend on public education solely from the state, after you take out all those things I went through, you're looking at $4,257 to 4,644. So that's the big problem that many of us have with this, is that you are giving more per pupil to the voucher program as opposed to what the state, if you dwindle it down to what the state is solely responsible to, is dramatically less.
Senator Alvarado, of course, federal funds flow through coffers just as ESSER 1, 2, and 3 went straight to school districts and billions of dollars showed up that who knows where it went. All I'm saying is that we have to consider that if we have a $96 billion budget for public schools and you spread that across 5.3 million students, I'm a lawyer, I'm not great at math, but I think that's north of $18,000 a student. So if that's the case, yes, you can a la carte exclude all these different items, but I think if you went back to your public schools and you said, I'd like to exclude all these different allotments from your funding streams because let's just reduce it to the ridiculous. They obviously don't matter for the debate on ESAs. They would absolutely tell you, stop saying that.
I think what is happening here, and I think it's spending in a very irresponsible way. I don't think you're comparing apples to apples when you dwindle everything down, okay? I think that there are some other things that haven't been taken into consideration in this. Recapture is one. I haven't really heard anybody talking about that, but recapture is going to be an issue in this, because if you take into account the attendance that will be lost, okay, as student enrollment declines, a district will appear to be wealthier and push school districts into recapture.
Senator Alvarado, as the exchange indicated with Senator Colkhorst and I, we have 40 other bills that deal with propping up and lifting up public schools and public school teachers, including reducing our reliance on recapture, which Republicans on this floor have shown a budget culture of doing over the past few bienniums, and on STAR, for instance, where we've taken the test in previous sessions from 15 down to 5 and counting. We have so many different pro-public school funding initiatives and reforms that are on the list of the teacher organizations for us to accomplish, and we're completely aligned on them, and we're going to accomplish them. This is bill number 1 on the Senate floor for this session.
And I wish that we were taking up, and I know we're taking this up, it's an emergency bill from the governor, and that's why we're doing it right now, but it would be responsible, I think, and prudent if we were also having conversations about what those other bills are going to be and what we're putting into public education. The comptroller had said that the economy is strong, however, that revenue collections are set to return to normal levels of growth. And I think it was at maybe our first finance meeting that it was said to keep that in mind, cautious not to commit short-term spikes in revenue to new ongoing state expenses. So I think, there's potential for a very slippery slope here when it comes to the funding of this. And I'm going to save the rest of it as we take up some amendments. Thank you for answering my question.
Thank you, Senator Alvarado.
Senator Alvarado, you'll be happy to know that because of your support of property tax relief, that HISD pays $0 in recapture. We have saved them over $200 million, and that was always the big issue, recapture. So your school district, where you live, you represent, pays $0 in recapture. Just wanted to get that on the record. We've done a great job on that. Senator Paxton, for what purpose?
To ask a question of the author.
Okay, and after Senator Paxton, we're going to take a 10-minute break so our ladies up front, anyone else can use the restroom up here. You all can walk off, but they can't. So we'll take a 10-minute break after Senator Paxton. You're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. President. And Senator Creighton, thank you for bringing forth this bill. I had a question regarding the education service providers. And specifically, my question is, under this bill, could a public school, including a public charter school, be an approved education service provider and participate in all the activities that those would be eligible